Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. It's a great pleasure to sit down today with Dr. Dan Diker from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Dan, you just put out a fantastic article that I want to share with all of our viewers about really what's happening in this ongoing war. So let's just begin. The language we're hearing from the administration right now in the U.S. is that the war is over, and now we're just kind of cleaning things up. But the feeling on the ground here in Israel is very much the contrary. Is this semantics or is this posturing? What is going on right now?
Moshe, thanks for the intro and thanks for the compliment. I'm going to tell my mom that you said that the article was a good one. That'll keep me in good standing in the home on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. We are in a war of deception, disinformation, and hardcore terror, all three in one. The United States, under President Trump, whom we must say is really the greatest friend in the White House that Israel has ever had, for his extraordinary support, not only in moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and supporting Israel's application of Israeli on the Golan Heights, and also recognizing Judea and Samaria as an inherent indigenous Jewish right for the last 3,600 years. Though sovereignty hasn't yet been applied to those areas, but we definitely have the express support on those issues from the administration. And of course, now the administration and led by President Trump has been an unwavering supporter of Israel's need to be very aggressive, very offensive against Hamas, destroy Hamas, and take very serious kinetic military moves. And the administration has been very strong on that. Now, having said that, President Trump has a vision for a new Middle East. I call it a Trump Middle East, which we saw in May 2025. President comes to the Gulf. He begins with Saudi Arabia. He's welcomed by 12 Arabian Night horses. He is considered by the Saudi-led Arab Muslim world as the Al-Faras al-Asil, the strong horse, which in Arab Muslim history is a very consequential concept. His role as the strong horse, as he sees it, is to coalesce the entire Middle East around a regional vision, a Trump vision driven by economic power, weaponry, if you will, to create a stable, secure, and prosperous Middle East. He sees that as the ultimate goal for the Middle East, and he felt that he needed to coalesce, and he could coalesce not only the Gulf, which he did well in 2025, including, ironically, the Saudis and the Qataris that were competing with one another for Trump's attention and investment, attention, and partnership. That's ultimately what Trump sees for the Middle East. Everything else for him, such as the war that is continuing to unfold in a new way of deception, I call it the Purim War, the war that you think is one thing and it's really nafocho. It's really something, as they say, it's the opposite of what it is. Trump is less interested in the details of Gaza, which he sees as a strategic annoyance in order to get to the real lottery, which is this prosperous, Trump-driven, economically fueled global center called the New Middle East under Trump and MBS. So what we're seeing now, and what we have been seeing, is Trump, the Trump rhetoric, which is really, we know by its very nature, it lends itself to exaggeration. Setting, in his view, a new standard for how the Middle East and the world should see the Middle East. The problem is that the Middle East doesn't work that way. The problem is that the Middle East that is established by warring tribes, clans, and families for the last 1,500 years has been a region awash in these, a tribal competition for power and control, full of clan hatred, one for the other. And that's exactly now what's happening with Hamas as a Muslim Brotherhood, Islamic, what they call resistance movement in Western terms, a terror, a jihadistic crusade in order to destroy non-Muslims in the Arab Muslim majority Middle East. So the Middle East, as it understands itself, culturally, politically, culturally, strategically, historically, collides with the Trump vision of a Middle East. And that is why Trump is trying, in a way, to impose a new image on the Middle East by saying the war is over, hostages have come back. True enough, but that's only the first part of the first stage of a larger war that is still being fought. So what we're witnessing right now as we have this conversation, where Hamas is murdering political opponents, the Abu Shabab family, the Dormush family, and scores of other Gazan families who hate Hamas. They are now in what we call an intra-Gaza Islamic jihad against one another. This is something that I think the administration views as an annoyance to getting to what we talked about a minute ago, the grander vision of a U.S. style, economically empowered, high tech global center called the New Middle East, and it simply doesn't reflect the reality of what is going on. Hamas is committed doctrinally, religiously, uh, ideologically to Israel's destruction. We can go and Google the 1988 charter of the Hamas, and we can see exactly its commitment in its own language to kill Jews and to kill off the Jewish state. This is a major issue, and right now, what we're seeing with Qatar and Turkey as the two Muslim Brotherhood sponsors of Hamas wanting to move itself into the Gaza Strip is a very serious and problematic development, which Israel is refusing to allow. But this is the type of deception warfare where the arsonist now wants to be the lead fireman in this burning Gaza Strip, which has really adopted the traditional Islamic way of war, which is really based on deception, swarming, disinformation, sneakiness, and that's where Hamas is today. It has become a ghost network on the one hand, which is mobilizing other terror groups and organizations within the Gaza Strip, maintains its control over a lot of the humanitarian aid that it claims Israel is not sending, which Israel is sending. It has people on the street now as the new Gaza security force, as opposed to the Hamas. So it will change its colors, but it will remain the same poisonous snake that it always was until Israel is able to decapitate the snake. And that is, in our view, and I think that General Avivi and I think the IDSF would probably subscribe to this view, the IDF is the only security military organization that has the political will and the military capability in order to execute an offensive to kill off the Hamas, secure and stabilize Gaza, whether or not it has to occupy this area for a period of time or not. Clearly, it's going to be a major challenge to have a non-Hamas, non-PA, a military force to secure Gaza and a technocratic government. All that remains to be seen. But until Hamas is forcefully and physically eliminated, we are still in the middle of that war.
Now, Dan, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner worked very impressively and negotiated the release of the living hostages from Gaza. But at the same time, that required them to directly negotiate in the same room with Hamas at the approval of President Trump. What does that mean on the broader scheme of things, that the U.S. is
What
now
it means,
recognizing?
yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a very important question you're asking, because what it suggests is that the West does not understand the way Arab and Muslim political culture works. If you want to weaken yourself as a Western actor in the Middle East, legitimize a terror group, Special Envoy Witkoff tells the story to Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes that he sat with no less than Hamas negotiator Khalil al-Hiya, who was supposed to have been eliminated by an Israeli military strike. He is a mass murderer. He is a terrorist. He survived the attempted assassination, and now he is speaking directly to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. Now, the problem there is when you legitimize Al-Hiya and Hamas, you've essentially cast them as a legitimate regional actor. So now the Middle East has 23 Arab Muslim states as opposed to 22. Witkoff tells the story about approaching Al-Hiya and sending his condolences about his son's elimination in Doha, and that he, Witkoff, as Witkoff tells himself on 60 Minutes, lost a son as well. So he basically wants to convey the message that, we're all people, we're all human beings, which is the last thing you want to tell a radical Islamic jihad organization, because that only signals collapse, concession, and weakness. It does not signal or it is not received the way Envoy Witkoff wants it to be received. And basically, what Witkoff did unwittingly, I'd like to go on record as saying there is deep appreciation for a lot of the very important work that Witkoff has done in getting the hostages back, and which is a next to impossible task. It would be tantamount to negotiating with Al Qaeda and ISIS, which the United States-led Western alliance did not have to do because they did not. This is a sui generis situation, holding hundreds of hostages of a major Western country, whether it's Israel, the United States, or anyone else in Europe. But here, what Witkoff did is essentially, unwittingly, empowering Hamas to carry out further terror attacks, because they now have the embrace of Steve Witkoff and his personal story on 60 Minutes. It's a major, major strategic mistake on the level of understanding and operating within the constraints of Arab Muslim political culture. The West never had understood enemies in the Middle East. Israel has paid a very, very high price to really begin to understand the political, cultural, strategic, ideological, and religious structure of Hamas, Hezbollah, its Iranian regime sponsors, as well as radical Salafi Sunni terrorists like Qaeda, like ISIS, like Nusra, and Hamas. So that's the disconnect. That it's our role in Israel to help close that gap, because as a matter of fact, just to end here, some of the major headline comments on Israel's investigation of itself following the October 7th, which hasn't officially and completely been launched, but we have certain aspects of self-investigation that have revealed that Israel too has not succeeded enough to mobilize experts in Arab Muslim political culture in order to understand the headspace and the thinking of its Hamas enemies.
So I want to take a very quick pause of my conversation with Dan to share with you a unique opportunity that is coming up in March. Many of you, of course, know that IDSF operates its very own pre-army Mechina program in the Gaza envelope on the campus that we recently built. Well, when the students go on break in March, we're opening up our campus to tourists from around the world. And it's a 4-week program. You can come all 4 weeks. You can come 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You mix and match as relevant for your schedule. And you'll join us in our campus in the Gaza envelope. It's very safe, don't worry. And it's really an opportunity to live Israel's story, to engage, explore, and really give back. This is not your typical vacation, but it's really an opportunity to see the country through the lens of its residents, to engage with the people, to learn, to study, to grow, to become inspired, and to volunteer in the area. Again, it's being housed in our Mechina program in the Tecuma community on the Gaza envelope. March 4 weeks, come 1 week, come 2 weeks, come 3 weeks, stay all 4 weeks. If you'd like more information just to learn what this is and what you can achieve in this very remarkable trip to Israel, get in touch with us. The contact information is on your screen to learn more. With that, let's go back to our conversation with Dan. So the peace plan for Gaza includes this peace board, this board of peace, to be headed by President Trump with members from other states around the world. I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit of a broader perspective on, foreign forces or entities trying to bring peace or monitor, stabilize peace in the Middle East, whether it's UN peacekeeping forces or the multinational forces after the David Accords in 1981. What can we learn from those setups that could teach us about what we can anticipate and see right now?
International forces and international interlocutors, whether they're political in nature, diplomatic in nature, or military in nature, have never worked in the Middle East. They didn't work in Lebanon, as we see what's happening with UN forces in Lebanon that essentially they've become, pardon the expression, prison mistresses of the Hezbollah throughout southern Lebanon, and they have become an obstacle to the importance of allowing Israeli forces to defend themselves now beyond Israel's northern border in southern Lebanon. There have been a number of documented what we call really collisions between us and UN forces, and we've discovered, by the way, back in the kidnapping of Israeli soldiers back in 2000. Regev and Goldwasser, that the UN were essentially complicit in those kidnappings, as amazing as that is. We have seen the UN time and time again fail on the ground. There is a small exception that the UNDOF forces, the observer forces in northern Sinai, have, I would say, since the Camp David Accords and the Treaty of Peace between Israel and Egypt in 1979, they have succeeded to a degree in northern Sinai because both Egypt and Israel wanted to enforce their own agreement, and in that case, the UN becomes an instrument of, an enforcer of two sovereign countries and neighbors, Egypt and Israel. And we wanted very much, opposite our Egyptian neighbor, for this peace agreement to hold. The peace agreement has held in the meantime. I will say that the UN was particularly incapable of fighting ISIS and Al Qaeda forces in northern Sinai. Ultimately, Israel played a major role with Egyptian cooperation after the Egyptians suffered tremendous losses by ISIS and Al Qaeda Salafist forces in northern Sinai. Israel was the one, not the UN, to destroy those Salafist forces and then reinstate a level of calm. We basically are right now, Moshe, in a type of a political structure in this. In this situation, what's called the Trump 20-point plan, which you can call sort of an international plan. It is not an international agreement. We have to understand that. There is no international legal mechanism to enforce such an agreement. The enforcement is called the strong horse, President Donald Trump. He is the enforcer of such an agreement. And we really need to understand that the international quality of this is what is restraining Israel from winning in Gaza. And this is it's a built-in constraint. And it's because Trump had to appeal to a number of his Arab partners, Saudi Arabia first. If there is a prospect of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and I think it's clear that the Saudis, from what I understand from speaking to some people in Saudi, is very interested in moving to a situation of normalization with Israel. Semicolon, but comma. The problem is that Mohammed bin Salman, His Excellency, is the leader of the Arab Muslim world, and the Arab Muslim street is squarely indoctrinated and given to unmitigated and total support of the what they call, the Palestinian people, which it should be translated in right now to Hamas control, because that's really what it is. But there's really a problem with the international quality of it, because there are so many built-in constraints in this Trump 20-point plan. From a diplomatic standpoint, it essentially is one major constraint on Israel. However, and I'll end with this question with this: Israel's position in Gaza is far, far better than it has been in many, many, many years. And I think that is why Minister Dermer and the Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to the 20-point outline, because what it did was it returned the hostages because of the international agreement on this. And the price paid is all of the remaining 19 points, which currently are not not implementable. However, Israel controls between 50 and 60% of Gaza. It is deeply into Gaza with topographical and strategic depth and advantage. And it basically is now positioned to continue this war against this jihad organization. So we should not have international expectations, which unfortunately we're confronting, about implementing this 20-point plan and going off into the sunset together. That is not going to happen. But Israel is in a far better military position because of this international outline and plan in order to continue the war.
Dr. Dan Diker from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Truly a pleasure to learn from you. I hope you'll come back. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.